my blessings, all 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 my blessings.
I need my blessings every penny, daily counting every single one, I'm seeing plenty. Level up and watch.
Welcome to the Michael Welch Podcast. Let's hit on the NBA playoffs first off here. In the West, we of course have the number 1 seeded Phoenix Suns and the 8th seed New Orleans Pelicans. In Game 2, Devin Booker was 12 for 18 in the first half with 31 points before suffering a hamstring injury in the third quarter. He didn't score in the third quarter before going out. He will miss Game 3, possibly Game 4, and he's TBD after that. Brandon Ingram had 37 points, 11 rebounds, and 9 assists. 26 points came in the second half, where he shot 69% from the field, and the Pelicans won 125-114 to tie the series at 1 game each. Pelicans shot 72% from 3 and 67% from the field in the second. Phoenix shot 21 and 46. Now, Ingram is still 24 years old, despite the fact that it seems like he's been around forever. He's still only in his 5th season. He's a dookie, much like, hopefully, fellow teammate Zion Williamson if he's still around. He's 6'8", he's got a 7'3" wingspan. He averaged 22.7 points, 5.8 rebounds, 5.6 assists this season. His shooting numbers were all down from last year across the board, with a 6% dip in three-point shooting being the most glaring difference. But his usage has increased, and there's been a lot of ups and downs with this team, with rookie coach Willie Green coming in, a change up in the rotation with a few guys, CJ McCollum coming in mid-season. But he's really stepping up now. And this is the first time he's had, on a big scale, the ability to kind of take over like this. And with his long, lanky body, he's really looking offensively more like a Kevin Durant. And he has a real opportunity now against a team with no Devin Booker, realistically for a couple of games. I don't expect him back for Game 3 or 4 to really see if we can get at least a 2-2 series out of Phoenix here and kind of push the Suns a bit. Now, can the Suns slow him down on the offensive side with their defense? And who's going to take more of the offensive load with Devin Booker out? Is it going to be Cameron Payne, who's averaging 20 minutes through the first couple of games and 10 points? Cameron Johnson, who's a staple off the bench and the running for 6th man of the year at 25 minutes and 12 points? Neither of those guys attract the same attention, the same polarity of the defense that Devin Booker has, especially when he's driving and hits those kickouts. So we'll see what they're able to do there. Chris Paul will definitely have more on his shoulders in every way, handling, scoring, distributing, and really trying to collapse that defense for shooters. But this is one of the most interesting series, I think, now moving forward, even if we don't really expect the Suns to lose. Now, obviously, they'll play the winner of the 4-5, Dallas and Utah. But these teams have to be very carefully monitoring each other, especially the Dallas Mavericks. Now, Luka is still nursing his hamstring, and certainly, again, that office is very closely monitoring that situation. If Dallas can win the first round with little or no Luka appearances and allow him to kind of recover and rest up to potentially match up against a worn-down Phoenix team, if the feisty Pelicans force 6 or 7 games because Booker's out or banged up, the Mavericks will, of course, be happy to exit the Utah series with a win and go into the second round against a worn-down Suns team that was not expected to go long in the first round. As it stands right now, Dallas is up 2-1 after an embarrassing showing by Utah in the last couple of games. In Game 2, Jalen Brunson was allowed to score a career-high 41 points on 60% shooting, along with 8 rebounds and 5 assists and 0 turnovers. Maxi Kleber hit 8 of 11 three-pointers for 25 points, and the Mavericks only had 3 turnovers the entire game, all by Spencer Dinwiddie, the guy who's brought in to help complement Luka Doncic and really be another piece to that team. And he has not been the key to this series lead right now. But Donovan Mitchell dropped 34 points. Bogdanovich dropped 25. Clarkson dropped 21. And Utah out-rebounded Dallas 50-31. But the final score was Dallas 110-104. In Game 3, Utah was a disaster, playing at home in Salt Lake. Dallas led for most of the game. Brunson had 31 points off 0 3-point makes. He did leave the game in the third quarter with a injury, but made it back in the game. It was a 12-point lead for Dallas at that point, and you got the feeling that Utah might make a run. The crowd was definitely in it, but they just couldn't quite do it, and he did make it back in the fourth quarter. The Mavs had 7 players score 12 or more points. 6 guys hit multiple 3-point balls. Donovan Mitchell had another 30-point night. He dropped 32 points, but hasn't been efficient shooting the entire series. Bogdanovich had 24 points. He's been the most efficient from an offensive standpoint. Rebounding numbers are more even in Game 3. Mavs hit more threes, had more steals, and won the turnover battle 14-8, although this has been one of the cleaner games in the playoffs. But the Mavs should not be in this at all. Gobert has been solid defensively, but this is just, there's no pressure on the ball handler, and it's embarrassing for Utah to be in this position going into Game 4 at home, trying to tie the series with Luka still hanging out. Oh, I don't need to enter the series yet. Oh, hey, look, we can get by with me maybe playing a game or two and keep an eye on Phoenix in the distance there. So this is just embarrassing for Utah all the way around. And Utah doesn't want to see even a 50% health Luka with the ball in his hands, one of the highest usage percentage players in the NBA, a guy that they're not going to be able to put a lot of pressure on. It's just not what they're able to do right now. Mike Conley has not been really effective, and he would just destroy them and not be very effective. To say he could be the swan song for the Utah Jazz would be an understatement. Now in the 3-6 hole, we have the Warriors up 3-0 on the Nuggets, and they look like the most dangerous team in the West, certainly, and the most dangerous team in the playoffs outside, or right along with the Celtics, I should say. Not a whole lot to say in this particular series. Jordan Poole in Game 1 had 30 points on 69% shooting from the field and 71% from 3, 87% from the line. Game 2, he had 29 points on 62, 50, and 100% from the line. Game 3 had 27 points on 69, 60, and 66, a lowly 66% from the free throw line. Curry, meanwhile, had a 34-point game in less than 23 minutes of play in Game 2 and is coming off the bench. The Warriors had a stretch from the second to third quarter in Game 2 where they scored 70 points in just 11 minutes of game time with that top lineup, the Splash Bros trio of Curry, Clay, and Poole, along with Draymond Green and Andrew Wiggins. The Clay, Curry, Poole trio is averaging over 75 points per game in this 3-game sample size, and 10 guys on the team are averaging double-digit minutes, so everyone's getting a little taste, a little sample of the playoffs here, which will hopefully, help the rotation moving forward. Jokic is averaging 29 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists, and 4 temper tantrums a game, and you can't really blame the guy. Not a complete roster. He's having a hard time getting back defensively, doing much of anything defensively. And the Warriors will be looking for the sweep on Saturday as the Warriors continue their hot offensive performance. And there's not a whole lot that the Denver Nuggets can do on either side of the ball. Now, the big series in the West, the Grizzlies and the Timberwolves in the 2-7 slot. We have Ja Morant and Karl Anthony Towns' fathers going back and forth all game, every game in their own fun little rivalry. In Game 1, the Timberwolves pulled the upset on the road in a 130-117 blowout, of course. Game 2 saw it go the other way, with the Timberwolves winning 124-96. We had 20 fouls in the first quarter, and 7 guys had 2 fouls in that first quarter as well. So it was just a slog to really start the game. Anthony Edwards was sped up and disrupted and only had 20 points after 36 in game 1, but still led his team in scoring. But they did a good job really disrupting his flow in only his second playoff game. Steven Adams started for the Memphis Grizzlies at center, but played less than 3 minutes. He had 2 fouls and went to the bench, but never came back. His flat-footedness and kind of sluggishness getting out to the perimeter defensively really causing problems in game 1. So it was, thought to be an adjustment to kind of pull him out of the game. And he was, especially after those 2 fouls. Not a good matchup for Karl Anthony Towns. Xavier Tillman came in after not playing in game 1 at all and falling out of the rotation a little bit. He did log 20 minutes in game 1. And I think his solid performance is what sold head coach Taylor Jenkins on his game 3 decision to not play Steven Adams at all. So we actually got a lot of Jaren Jackson Jr. at center, Triple J's. He hit 4 big threes that were very impactful. He finished with 16 points, and the Grizzlies had 7 players in double digits, led by Ja Morant's 23 points, 10 assists, and 9 rebounds, leading the way for the Grizz. In the third quarter is where they were really able to create separation. Karl Anthony Towns was shut down in the paint. Anthony Edwards was chilling on the bench, and Ja Morant had 8 points as part of a big run there to really create some distance. He did go down at the end of the third quarter after a collision, but he came back in the fourth. But you really have to wonder how this physical play is going to affect him moving forward. Of course, if they get out of round 1, and move forward into the playoffs, as he's just always hitting the ground. It's just a very physical series. The Timberwolves tied a season-low 30 made field goals in the blowout loss. Now in Game 3, Steven Adams, again, didn't start. Jaren Jackson Jr. started at center. Xavier Tillman picked up some time off the bench as well. The Timberwolves scored the first 12 points and looked great coming out of the first handful of minutes. They actually held a 26-point lead in the first quarter, and it was just a weird seesaw after that. In the second quarter, they only scored 12 points total, and the lead was cut all the way down to 7 heading into the half. In the third quarter, they again pushed it out to a 20-point lead, and in the fourth quarter, they again scored only 12 points, and they ultimately lost the game, and this was at home for them. This was in Minnesota. They ultimately lost the game 104-95, just baffling Minnesota Timberwolves fans. It just looks of disbelief as, what started as a great performance, a great game. All the young guys playing, well, not all of them, but playing pretty well, just came to a thud at the end. So again, 26-point lead in the first half, scored the first 12 points of the game. That was in the first quarter. In the third quarter, they again had a 20-point lead, but in quarters 2 and 4, only 12 points apiece scored in each of those quarters, and they lose the game at home to fall behind 2-1 in the series after winning Game 1 on the road in Memphis. The Grizzlies shot about 10% better from the field and 10% better from the three-point line in the second half. Desmond Bane had 7 threes on the game for 26 points to lead the team. Ja Morant had a modest 16-point, 10-10 triple-double. Brandon Clark had 20 points, and it was a crazy disruptive defense by this team that helped get them back in the game twice. 20-point leads were blown by the Timberwolves, but ultimately helped them win it in the fourth. And it was mostly without the NBA's leading shot blocker, Jaren Jackson Jr. He played 20-something minutes, 24 minutes, I believe, and had foul trouble in the third quarter that saw him on the bench for quite a stretch of time. Grizzlies actually had a few more turnovers than the Timberwolves, but these teams combined for 34 of them in this back and forth game. Timberwolves shot for less than 40% from the floor for both games 2 and 3. And Karl Anthony Towns was a no-show in game 3. Sat for most of the fourth quarter. Edwards is a little banged up in the second quarter as well, which again brings the physical nature into it. How are these teams going to hold up? Ja Morant in particular. But the Grizzlies now lead the series 2-1, and it's the Timberwolves' move to try and get a little bit better shooting, to try and get Karl Anthony Towns more engaged. If they can get Jaren Jackson Jr. into foul trouble, that certainly helps, and he's been in that situation multiple times. Grizzlies making the move early to get Steven Adams off the floor, so this will continue to be an interesting series moving forward if the Timberwolves can make the proper adjustments. In the Beastly Eastly, we of course have the 1-8 matchup with the Miami Heat and the Hawks out of Atlanta. In Game 2, Jimmy Butler dropped 45 points. Trae Young had 25 points and 10 turnovers, so not a great showing, all things considered there. Bogdan Bogdanovic had 19 of his 29 points in the fourth quarter to keep this a close game, but they ultimately did fall, and they're down 2-0 in the series. I don't know the final score here, but he's been the most productive player in the series for the Hawks that are missing pick-and-roll man Clint Capella, which certainly would be a nice piece to have here. But Bogdanovic, again, a nice performance. Game 3 is tonight as I'm recording, so the final you'll probably have by the time you listen to this. But this series, whether it goes 4 games, 5 games, should continue to be real contentious and a real opportunity for the Hawks to still get involved and see what they can do against a top defense like this. Teams down 0-2, have a 92% loss rate in the first round, but the series could still be entertaining. Kyle Lowry and DeAndre Hunter received double technicals, and we're getting into it the other night. We, of course, have Jimmy Butler, Trae Young, PJ Tucker, all trash talkers. Duncan Robinson was hot in Game 1 shooting. Butler in Game 2 here. Tyler Hero chipped in 15 as well. Still have shooters, still have offense, still have plenty of opportunity for pushing and shoving and trash talking. Bogdanovic has been the leading scorer for the Hawks, and Trae has only hit 2 3-pointers through the first 2 games, but he can still cook. It's possible the Hawks don't have the ability to problem solve this defense, committing 37 turnovers and shooting less than 30% through the first couple games. But I'd like to see if they can figure something out, especially playing in front of their home crowd. Game 3 was delayed due to a suspicious package outside the arena, but again, it should be tipped and playing and possibly completed by the time you listen to this. But the Heat at this time, probably going forward, not really in any danger of losing this series. The winner of that matchup, which should be the Heat, will be the 4-5, which is the 76ers out of Philly, and the Toronto Raptors. I'm missing a T in my notes here. That's not a good sign. So to recap Game 1, Tyrese Maxey, the young man, had 38 points. Joel Embiid, in a so-so performance in the first half, had 19 and 15. James Harden, which has kind of been an afterthought, all things considered, had 22 and 14. Scotty Barnes for the Raptors, the possible rookie of the year, certainly in the running, was injured and probably out with his ankle injury. Van Fleet really needed to shoot more, and size was going to be a problem, as we saw, and they were blown out 131 to 111 as the 76ers rolled the Raptors in Game 1. So Game 2, Gary Trent Jr., a little under the weather, 4 fouls, 0 points, not very productive. No Scotty Barnes with that rolled ankle. Van Fleet did lead the Raptors in shot attempts with 23. He also led the team in misses with 16. Not a great showing. OG Anunoby hit 4 3-pointers and actually led the Raptors with 26 points. But the 76ers won 122 to, not 76, that's a mistyping, 96. We're going to say 96. They blew him out again, behind 52% shooting from the field, 46% shooting from 3. Embiid, 31 points and 11 rebounds. Tobias Harris, who's been a surprising piece to this offense, 20 points and 10 rebounds. Maxey, another 23, showing he's not a one-trick pony in his second playoff game, second year in the league. Also had 8 assists and 9 rebounds. Harden had a dumpster fire game, 14 points, 33 and 25 shooting from the field and 3 on only 9 attempts. A little bit more efficient distributing the ball. But really, he's looking to be a little bit of an afterthought as he struggled down the stretch in the season after the trade. And Maxey really stepping up. Tobias Harris being surprisingly productive on both ends. Embiid struggling a little bit, as was expected per this series, even without Scotty Barnes. And the Toronto Raptors were kind of an upset pick going into the series. They had a real opportunity in Game 3 to pull the series a little closer. That was in Toronto. No Tyrese Thibault in that game due to vaccination status. The Raptors had a 17-point lead at one point, and the 76ers came back and won in overtime on an excellent Embiid three-pointer with 0.8 seconds left. He's actually done that many, many times on a late game tying or game-winning shot, and they pull it out 104-101 in overtime. Harden had 19 points and 10 assists and fouled out in the fourth, but again, he was not one of the main drivers of this team. Tobias, 11 points and 12 boards. Maxey had a 19-point game again, was efficient. Embiid had 33 and 13. Barnes was still out with that sprained ankle for Toronto, but he could be back on Saturday for Game 4. OG Anunoby led the Raptors again with 26. Gary Trent was back from that illness and put up 24 points. Precious Achimua had 20 points in a rough night for Van Fleet and Pascal Siakam, who combined for 24 points on less than 30% shooting for those two guys. So just not very effective there, and some of the young pieces stepping up. And no Scotty Barnes, just a tough time all the way around for the Raptors, down 3-0 after a big three-pointer in overtime, won it for the 76ers. Interesting stats here. The 76ers shot 51 and 41 from the field at three-point line. They were out-rebounded by Toronto. They out-rebounded Toronto by 14. They also had more than double the turnovers. So oddly enough, what that resulted in is both teams making exactly 38 field goals and both teams making exactly 13 three-pointers, but the Toronto Raptors had 18 more shot attempts and still lost the game at home. Drake and Embiid were yapping down the tunnel at the end of the game. Drake, of course, the ambassador for the Toronto Raptors, being a Toronto native. Always a good back and forth between those guys. And Drake's reputation with the league and NBA players. But we won't get that for much longer, as a sweep is on the horizon. Could be a little problematic moving forward. Embiid is thought to have a torn ligament in his right hand, but is going to continue playing through it. It'll be problematic, obviously, moving forward. The Raptors could still win a game here, especially at home in Game 4, win a Game 5, possibly in Philly. But down 3-0, obviously, they're not going to rally back for this series. But moving forward against presumably the Heat, this is going to be a huge problem for Embiid and the 76ers. To the bottom of the East bracket in the 3-6 slot, you have the Milwaukee Bucks and the Chicago Bulls. They're one of three teams who haven't yet played their third game as I'm recording this, but tied at 1-1 after Chicago could have won Game 1 and did win Game 2 in Milwaukee. And you have to have real questions about the Bucks, who have at times looked sluggish in the regular season, like they didn't really want to be there. Now they look like they don't really want to be in the playoffs. And the Bulls have not looked good through the back half of this season. So really, generally, just questions about both of these teams and what the hell is going on. Pressure will be on the defending champs now. Shifting to Chicago, Chris Middleton sprained his MCL in the second half and will be expected to miss at least the remainder of round 1. That's a big problem. Bobby Portis was swiped in the eye, but should be okay to play. George Hill's already out with an abdominal strain with no timetable to return. Injuries all over the place, all throughout the playoffs. A healthier team obviously tends to be favored. So just more things to keep in mind. DeMar DeRozan dropped 41 points in Game 2 and 0 3-pointers, as that's not his game, but he did take a couple of attempts. This team only attempted 25 3-pointers in the game. It's not terribly unusual, as one of their main guys here, one of their main contributors, shot takers, does not throw up a lot of 3 balls again in DeRozan, but just something to keep in mind moving forward, that they will not put up a lot of those balls should they make it to the next round, or should that be relevant to this series. However, they did hit 48% of them in Game 2, 12 for 25. Alex Caruso had 16 points, 10 assists, was involved in key plays all the way throughout both of these games, might be one of the most impactful players. Nikola Vucevic had 13 points and 13 boards. Zach LaVine, of course, playing in his first playoff series in his 8th year in the league, was a great compliment in this particular game. On only 13 shot attempts, he scored 20 points and was effective. Middleton, before exiting, 18 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds. It's going to be problematic losing him. Giannis had 33, 18, 9 assists. Brook Lopez, who missed a good chunk of time, and it's great to have him part of the lineup, 25 points. And the Bulls defense is just doing an excellent job on this squad, even in Alonzo Ball's absence. He will not be a part of this series. The Bulls had a 16-point lead at one point in the fourth quarter before the Bucks responded and really cut that lead back down, and the Bulls went right back and pushed that lead back out again. Clutch shots by DeMar DeRozan, good defensive plays by Caruso, and they managed to win in Wisconsin. And going back to Chicago, this is going to be an interesting series. Not a lot of points, a lot of defense, key pieces missing on both ends, and 2 teams that aren't particularly performing well right now. But upsetty, I don't know. But certainly one of the series to keep an eye on now that there's a lot of clarity heading into Game 4s for most of these series. So certainly one of the few to keep an eye on. And finally, at the bottom of the East bracket, one of the top matchups in the entire playoffs, the top matchup right now. Only 2 games played so far in the Brooklyn Nets and Boston Celtics matchup. Game 2 saw Coach K sitting courtside, of course. Kyrie Irving, Seth Curry, Jason Tatum, all former Duke players. He coached Kevin Durant is part of Team USA in the Olympics as well. The first quarter saw Bruce Brown have 10 points. In the second quarter, saw Goran Dragic have 16 points off the bench, as we had 2 auxiliary players really contributing, as both Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant had a hell of a night against this defense. Kyrie Irving was really a non-factor for most of the game. He was observing Ramadan, so he hadn't eaten for 13 hours or had anything to drink for 13 hours prior. Sunset was halfway through the first quarter, so he went and grabbed a banana when he took his normal bench time towards the end of the first quarter, and Durant usually plays the entire first quarter and into the second, so that was normal for the rotation to kind of do that, but you have to wonder if he was low energy during the game, besides getting just mugged by this defense, and he was really a non-factor in the fourth quarter. But he finished with only 10 points. He shot 30% from the field, 0 for 1 from 3, so 4 for 13 altogether from the field. And Kevin Durant constantly pushed off his spot. Guys were so close to him, it looked like they were eating lint out of his belly button. He did have 27 points, but 18 of them came off of 20 free throw attempts, as he was bodied and pushed around and really forced out of his rhythm. He had 6 turnovers as well. He finished 4 of 17 shooting from the field and only had 2 3-point attempts, one of them going in. Bruce Brown ended up finishing with 23 points, and Dragic finished with 18 points altogether. But those two both had their kind of quarters where they were keeping the team afloat. Andre Drummond played 23 minutes. I was kind of wondering if he was going to get played off the floor altogether and not kind of make it with this lineup. But he stayed, and he managed to make 0 impact. His plus minus is literally 0, oddly enough. Now the Boston Celtics, Jason Tatum did not score until the last couple minutes of the first half. He grabbed a steal and had a dunk. And the next possession, they had another stop, and he was able to hit a three-pointer. So he had 5 points in the first half. He finished with 19 points on 5 of 16 shooting. He had 10 assists and 6 rebounds, but again, part of that stifling defense. Durant had everyone thrown at him. Tatum was part of that group, and a great job on the defensive side. Al Horford, again, a great contributor, 16 points, 6 rebounds, 15 for Daniel Thesis, who helped roll in there as well. 22 points for Jaylen Brown, and 3 other guys in double figures as well. Grant Williams had 17, hit 3 3-pointers. He was great to generate some offense early with a couple buckets as well when the team was really struggling. Marcus Smart had 12 points, reverted back to his normal 3-point shooting, 1 of 6. He didn't hit 4 3-pointers in this one. And 10 for Pritchard, who hit a couple shots late to kind of seal the deal. Brooklyn had an 8-point lead with 10.5 minutes to play, and the Celtics went on a 25-7 run in about 9.5 minutes of game time in order to take a 10-point lead with 1:10 remaining and put the game away. Just lockdown defense. No one on the Nets could move, and the Celtics just able to generate some offense, turn defense into offense, as they say. Get out in transition, hit the buckets they needed to, and turn the tide in the fourth quarter. Again, a fourth quarter lead for Brooklyn getting away, and the Celtics are able to take a 2-0 lead heading into Game 3 in Brooklyn. Now, Robert Williams, the main centerpiece in the center for the Boston Celtics, is expected to be back from his torn meniscus for Game 3. He's hoping to play, if not certainly by Game 4, but expected for Game 3. And ironically enough, Ben Simmons, who hasn't played all season, is expected back by Game 4, maybe Game 3, but Game 4 as well. So we'll be seeing both of those guys presumably very soon here. 2 big pieces for these teams coming back. I don't know what the hell Ben Simmons is going to do, what he's going to add to a team that he hasn't played with at all when he hasn't played a full season of basketball, period. And so not sure what to expect there. But Robert Williams will certainly add something to the Celtics, and we'll see if the Nets can kind of make a homestand. They can certainly still make adjustments. Kevin Durant had a number of open lanes available for passing a number of times when double teams were brought, where defenders shaded over in his direction. Seth Curry hit a few shots. So there's certainly the chances there to score. Kyrie Irving can certainly play a little better offensively as well. And defensively, at times, they've been excellent on the Celtics as well. And again, had leads in the fourth quarter and either the fourth quarter or the third quarter of Game 1. So the Nets are certainly right there. These are still very much close games. Robert Williams presumably will add a lot more to the Celtics. Don't know about Ben Simmons. Again, at home for the Nets, the next 2 games. Very exciting to watch. Now, power ranking, just in general, keeping an eye on these series, the top series remaining to watch. This is still number 1, Boston Celtics and the Nets. Number 2 for me is still Memphis and Minnesota. I still like the chess match that's kind of going on there. Memphis can still run away with it. Wouldn't be as exciting that way, obviously, but still a lot of young talent there. And if Minnesota can kind of come out and be productive and have everyone engaged, both offensively and defensively, Pat Beverly on the defensive side, Karl Anthony Towns on both sides of the ball, Anthony Edwards on offense, who seems to be the only one that really wants the game at all times. I think that's number 2 series to kind of keep an eye on. Number 3 for me is either Phoenix, New Orleans, or Chicago and Milwaukee. I tend to lean more towards Phoenix and New Orleans, simply because that Devin Booker is quite a wrinkle, and the Pelicans seem to be a well-coached team right now. I don't think that the Phoenix are in major trouble, but these next couple of games could be interesting. And it's just exciting to see more what Phoenix is going to do without Devin Booker and what they're able to bring to the table, and also what the future of the Pelicans could be a little bit from that perspective. Again, don't expect to see Zion Williams this season, but they have a lot of pieces there. Chicago-Milwaukee is a sloshy defensive mess. However, something's wrong with Milwaukee and missing pieces. Can Chicago pull an upset? That's an interesting series, I think. Now, Dallas-Utah should be right up there, but Utah should be winning this. Without Luka Doncic, it's still not as fun a watch. If he gets in, it certainly moves up and jumps the Phoenix Pelicans Chicago-Milwaukee series and moves into the 3 spot, possibly the 2 spot, jumping the Memphis-Minnesota series. If Memphis goes up 3-1, but the Jazz should be able to win this. So, I don't know what's going on there. It's just an embarrassment if we get Dallas pulling out of there with still a hobbled Luka, and Phoenix turns on and just powers through the Pelicans, and we get like a round 2 sweep of Phoenix over Dallas. And finally, we have 3 series here. The Warriors are probably going to sweep, or a gentleman's sweep, as they say, over Denver, where Denver wins Game 4, and Golden State cleans it up in Game 5 at home. Milwaukee over Atlanta. Maybe Atlanta wins a game. It'd be nice to see them win a game. I put that in my 6 spot, Miami over Atlanta. So I guess bottom 2 would be Golden State, Denver, and Philadelphia, Toronto, which is also defensively a mess to watch. Offensively challenged sometimes. James Harden is not fun to watch anymore. Offensively challenged is Toronto sometimes. So I would say Brooklyn, Boston's number 1 if you're just keeping an eye on a few games to watch here and there. My number 2 would be Minnesota, Memphis. My number 3 would be Phoenix, New Orleans. My number 4 would be Chicago, Milwaukee. My number 5 would be Utah, Dallas. My number 6 would be Miami, Atlanta. My number 7 would be Philadelphia, Toronto. And my number 8 would be Golden State, Denver. And I expect the Warriors to clean up Denver on Saturday. Couple of NFL notes to hit on besides roster moves. I don't know who first reported this Tom Brady crazy conspiracy story, as it's been convoluted a little bit, twisted, buried, and then I guess properly reported and added to by a few different sources. But the story is that Tom Brady, who has a relationship with Dolphins owner Stephen Ross and minority owner Bruce Beal, was going to indeed fake retire and then sign as a consultant with the Dolphins, and then worm his way into a quarterback position, work his way back onto the field, which would force the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to have to negotiate for compensation because they still owned his quarterback rights. And so the Dolphins would effectively have to trade for him. And Brady could then be a Miami Dolphin and play against the Patriots. On top of that, Sean Payton, who of course retired as the New Orleans head coach, would then be brought on board as the head coach once Brian Flores was fired. And that would be it. We would have Tom Brady as a Dolphin. He would have a new coach in Sean Payton. He'd be able to go to war with the Patriots. He'd, I guess, worm his way out of Tampa Bay. It's a very strange story, but it certainly is not out of the realm of possibilities for what could be flowing through Tom Brady's mind. It is ironic that Brian Flores filed the lawsuit after he received a text message from Belichick congratulating him for a job that he hadn't interviewed for yet. And that Belichick stated he meant to text Brian Dubal in a text message chain, congratulating him on the position that Flores had not yet interviewed for, prompting Flores to then make the lawsuit of discrimination against the NFL. So it is ironic that Bill Belichick was still involved in this story. And just a very interesting web of, I don't want to say conspiracies, because this sounds like it was very much a possibility. It actually begs a lot of questions for being such a small point now that he's back with Tampa Bay. But does Sean Payton stay retired now? Or did he actually plan on coaching this season? Will we see him back next year then, just like that? What happens with the Dolphins? Is there going to be anything punishable with tampering rules? There could be a punishment. There probably won't be, but there could be. And what of Tampa Bay? Surely not everyone disliked Bruce Arians as much as Tom Brady did. Of course, there's reports that Tom Brady and Todd Bowles disagreed with Arians quite often. And, of course, Brady wanted to play again. Didn't feel it was appropriate to come back to the Dolphins with the discrimination lawsuit and to force his way in after that. So, sounds like he decided not to follow through with that supposed alleged plan and went back to Tampa and forced Arians out. But certainly not everyone's on board with the Tom Brady having his way plan in Tampa Bay. Now, he has everyone's respect. Let's go win a Super Bowl, Tom. Let's do it again. But certainly that has to cause some disruption in Tampa Bay. And although that's a terribly weak division with the Saints and the Panthers and the Falcons, certainly that has to be a disruption to that team and that staff in general and some of those players this season. As even when he announced he was coming back, not all the players who hit free agency the following day re-signed with the Buccaneers. So it just seems like a strange situation, and not sure if anything's going to become of it. Not even entirely certain why it had to happen that way, why he couldn't just request a trade or ask for a release as Tom Brady, why he felt he had to kind of retire, then sign as a consultant, and then make his way as then state, he wanted to make it back to the field as a quarterback and kind of create this whole deal and pull Sean Payton with them. And just a very strange story. I'm sure there's different contract issues in there, but still, this is Tom Brady, and if he wanted out, I'm sure there were more legitimate onboard ways that he could have done it. So I'm sure there are pieces to the story still missing, but it just sounds scandalous the way it's been kind of brought to light now, the different pieces. That sounds quite legitimate. And you have to wonder what the impact will be moving forward, specifically on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and kind of the mindset of different folks in that building moving forward. They have too much talent not to win this year, but I'm not sure about being a top team, one of the top odds favorites to win a Super Bowl. So just something to kind of keep in mind there as we move forward in different storylines and different maybe actions moving forward. Because I'm not sure it feels so great to be a chess piece in someone's failed revenge tour or the backup date for the prom in this particular case, even if it raises your ability and your ceiling to win a Super Bowl. Obviously, he's a better quarterback than Kyle Trask, the second-year man out of Florida, who would have been the next guy up for the quarterback position. And if I were to say the over-under for rookie quarterbacks starting by week 13 in that division is 3, I'm not sure where you would fall, but that's could be a possibility. So, too much talent to win, not too much talent to survive an ego trip. The other story that came out that is relatively small as far as on-the-field production, but long-term could impact the on-the-field product, was the fact that the Washington football team, the Washington Commanders, have been accused of cooking the books and stealing shared ticket revenue from the rest of the league. So NFL teams do share 40% of home ticket sales, and allegedly Washington has been classifying some of those ticket sales as concert and other forms of entertainment ticket sales, and not reporting the full amount of ticket sales that have been sold as home game revenue. Of course, their owner is Dan Snyder, which is a name any football fan knows now who spent any time watching the NFL. And ideally, you don't know the name of any NFL owners, ideally. But he's, of course, had sexual harassment scandals, most recently a sexual harassment scandal. He paid $10 million to the NFL as a fine for that. He's not supposed to be involved in daily activities. It's questionable whether he's actually following that order. His wife's taken over operations. He's got interesting stances on other issues, and he might be forced to sell the team now that his hands actually been caught effectively in the pockets of other NFL owners, effectively stealing. So that's the other hot piece of news, is if he is caught and, I guess, effectively convicted of this, it's not out of the realm that he could finally be pushed out of ownership of the team, and it might end up in the hands of someone else sooner rather than later. And that always brings with it different changes in leadership, ownership, management, and Washington headed hopefully into greener pastures moving forward, regardless of what happens. But that was just another kind of under the radar story with all the player transactions that have happened. Was the owner scamming money from other owners, and we'll see what impact that could have potentially long-term on the franchise.
All my blessings, 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 all my blessings.
I need my blessings every penny. Daily counting every single one, I'm seeing plenty. Level up and watch that beat turn into a